You ever considered that being the absolute smartest person in the room might actually be the very thing holding you back? Today, we're unpacking a seriously counterintuitive strategy for advancing your career and your social life. We're not talking about working harder or aggressively showing off your brilliant ideas. We're talking about an insider's playbook for strategic ignorance. Essentially, why you might actually want to pretend to be a little less intelligent than you really are.
The 19th century philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche hit the nail on the head when he wrote, "Every profound spirit needs a mask. Now and then, even foolishness is a mask." Think about the weight of that for a second. The modern workplace, our social circles, they're honestly a lot like a historical royal court. To survive the politics, and more importantly, to thrive and advance, you sometimes have to hide your true intellect. You literally need to wear a mask.
Act 1. The threat of the intellect.
We're all raised to believe we should just constantly shine and stand out, right? But possessing highly visible insight often paints a massive, invisible target right on your back. There's this profound line in Daniel Keyes' novel Flowers for Algernon where he notes, with intelligence, you don't just see more, you see through things. And that's the catch. When your mind works at that high level, you see right through people. You expose their illusions, their deceptions, and the limits of their own understanding. And frankly, that makes people deeply, deeply uncomfortable around you.
Arthur Schopenhauer actually captured the psychological root of this discomfort perfectly. He said, "Intellectual superiority offends by its very existence, without any desire to do so." The reality we have to face is that most people get a huge chunk of their self-worth from their own intellectual ability. So when your sharp insight accidentally exposes their dullness or their naive thinking, it doesn't just annoy them, it deeply wounds their vanity. It breeds insecurity, resentment, and honestly, sometimes a very real thirst for vengeance against you.
Which brings us to Act 2, Gracián's master strategy.
So how exactly do we navigate this absolute minefield of fragile egos? Well, for that, we turn to the 17th century thinker Baltasar Gracián, who advises this. The wisest sometimes play this card, and there are times when the greatest knowledge consists in appearing to lack knowledge. Now, I want to be super clear here. This isn't about acting totally stupid or incompetent. You still have to be effective. It's really the sophisticated art of feigning ignorance. It's biting your tongue when you could easily correct someone, simply because, as Gracián noted, with fools being wise counts for little.
And this ties right back to Nietzsche's motif of the mask. Slipping on this mask of mediocrity isn't just about selfish self-protection. In a weird way, it's often an act of pity and genuine kindness. By dialing back your own intense insight, you avoid irritating the majority of the mediocre minds around you. You protect their vanity, and that keeps the social harmony perfectly intact.
Let's move into Act 3, the corporate court.
Okay, let's take this out of the abstract and into concrete career advancement. We are all universally sold this myth, right? The myth that promotions depend purely on great job performance. But the reality, and this is backed by Stanford professor Jeffrey Pfeiffer's research, is that promotions depend heavily on likability and managing those in power. It's a massive aha moment that completely shatters the whole illusion of a pure meritocracy.
Professor Pfeiffer actually lays out 3 precise steps for career advancement. First, you need to be noticed. Second, you have to influence the dimensions used to measure your accomplishments. And third, and this is the absolute kicker, you must enhance the egos of your superiors. Pay really close attention to that last step. The data literally shows that managing upward and navigating the fragile egos of the people who hold the keys to your promotion is far, far more important than your raw, unvarnished competence.
To pull off that crucial final step, Pfeiffer says you must make sure you are effective at managing those in power, which requires the ability to enhance the ego of those above you. You literally have to make your bosses feel like you desperately depend on their superior guidance, their wisdom, and their insight. If you walk in looking totally self-sufficient and intellectually superior to them, they aren't going to want to promote you. They'll just feel threatened by you.
This builds flawlessly on a classic rule of power dynamics from Robert Greene, the author of the 48 Laws of Power. He writes, "Always make those above you feel comfortably superior. Make your masters appear more brilliant than they are, and you will attain the heights of power." So Pfeiffer gives us the modern empirical data, and Greene gives us the historical, tactical execution. You flatter the boss's ego by intentionally dimming your own light, just enough to let theirs shine the brightest.
Actually, scratch that. Gracián warned us of this exact same thing centuries ago. Avoid outdoing your superior. Triumphing over them is either stupid or fatal. We really need to cement this as the absolute golden rule of the corporate court. Showing off too much talent or too much insight doesn't win you favor, it just sparks fear and insecurity in your masters.
Now, I know what some of you are probably asking right now. Well, what if I don't need their favor? What if you're completely self-sufficient? Maybe you don't need a promotion, you work for yourself, you're entirely independent. Does this whole strategy of playing the fool still actually apply to you?
Let's find out in Act 4, the ultimate humility. Because you see, playing the fool isn't just some cynical trick for climbing the corporate ladder. It's actually the very foundation of true philosophical wisdom. Take the fascinating historical anecdote of Socrates. In ancient Greece, Socrates' friend went to the famous oracle at Delphi, and the priestess made this incredibly bold declaration: "No man is wiser than Socrates." But when Socrates heard this, he was completely baffled. He looked at himself and thought, "I know that I have no wisdom, small or great. So how on earth could the oracle call him the wisest man in Athens?"
The answer to Socrates' riddle, which his student Plato recorded for us, is pretty amazing. Socrates went around investigating all the so-called wise politicians and experts of his day, and he quickly realized they all mistakenly believed their opinions were absolute truth. Socrates' ultimate realization was that his own wisdom didn't come from possessing a ton of knowledge. It came from being the only guy conscious of his own immense ignorance. He was wise precisely because he knew that his wisdom was in truth worth nothing.
But here's the catch. Socrates refused to wear the mask of foolishness with others. Just track how the historical timeline played out. He questioned the supposedly wise men. He publicly exposed their ignorance. By doing that, he made powerful enemies of the absolute worst kind. And ultimately, he was charged with corrupting the youth and sentenced to death. This is the terrifying historical proof of what actually happens when you refuse to veil your intellect and instead insist on publicly exposing the limits of powerful people's understanding.
So let's bring everything we've unpacked together into an insider's playbook. Gracián tells us to feign ignorance. Green advises us to never outshine the master. Pfeffer brings the hard data on why we must flatter the boss's ego. And Socrates teaches us the ultimate wisdom of knowing our own ignorance. Take a second to really reflect on this. How can you apply these core tactics to your own life? Where in your career, or even your social circles, might you genuinely benefit from just putting on the mask?
I'm going to wrap up this explainer by leaving you with this incredibly impactful thought from William Shakespeare, because it really captures the essence of everything we've talked about today. The fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool. True power, true survival, and true advancement often require the ultimate humility. So, the next time you feel that burning urge to show everyone exactly how smart you are, pause and ask yourself, are you brave enough to put on the mask and play the fool? Thanks so much for joining me.